So here we are then, the end of 2019, end of a decade, end of an era. So I'm just going to make this video just to reflect on this past year and perhaps this past 10 years. So this year, 2019, is my first full year back in England. I had to reflect a lot on what I've achieved and a lot of things that I haven't achieved. Actually, I ended the last year with the majority of things already set up for this year. I mean, I was already working, I was doing things which were building towards my writing. This year really has been the culmination of many of my objectives from last year. One of the objectives this year was to make a video at least once a month. I know I didn't make the videos as much as I wanted to. I wanted to collect a progressive journal of everything I was doing gradually to where I am today. It just gets to a point where you don't really know what to say, or I get busy and distracted. I started the year off and I went to a writer's school back in January. That was a weekend away. Of course, that even gave me the idea to start doing these writers' retreat. I feel a lot of my writing has developed greatly by reading a lot. So I've read a lot more this year, between fiction and non-fiction. Mainly non-fiction, funny enough. You know, a lot of these self-help books, things from Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn. Lots of my non-fiction activities have been towards like the human species. So I read a book by Alice Roberts and Graham Hancock talking about development of civilization. So the university has begun. I mean, my objective to come back to England was to go to university. It wasn't exactly the university I was expecting to go to, but at the same time it's still a form of getting knowledge to develop my skills to be a writer. And the idea would be to complete 3 years to get my BA in English Literature with Creative Writing. And following that, I would like to go and do a master's degree in Bath University, which is nearby. It's not so nearby. I went for a walk there the other day and it was still a good hour stomp from here. We're going to have to get driving by then, or at least get my license. I mean, the objective this year was to get a car and get driving, but I'm good walking and don't really have anywhere else to go than to work and home, I guess. Work, home and study. So fun and games. May was a big month this year, 2019. It really was. So I went to Cuba for 10 days with Sebastian. It was a hell of an interesting experience. The perspective that everyone's got on a certain place, and you wouldn't really know unless you went there. But even if you went there, you don't see what you want to see. In the end, I really didn't know what to expect, so I didn't know what I wanted to see. But again, all I really saw was just people be people. You know, they all got to get on with their job, they all got to get on with their life, and they all got to make the best of what they've got. But that's very much a common philosophy nowadays. You know, there's no point looking to ideologies of what's right and wrong, left and right. It's just a matter of fact of survival, and I think in England people survive, but they survive better than they do in Cuba, mainly because of the international cooperation that helps England and the UK. That in mind though, there was also an election this year of Brexit again, of elections with the Conservatives winning. Again, I didn't have much of a say on that because I don't really feel whatever happens in regards to elections is going to affect me individually. That's another story altogether. Bouncing from to and fro for this year because in July I also went on a summer retreat in the School of Myth, which I will make a video about because it was an interesting experience. I think if there's one thing I learned this year about story writing, is really the concept of storytelling. It's something that needs to be told and needs to be listened. So it's got to be written in a way that it can be expressed for the person to feel like someone's telling them something. In this storytelling experience in Dartmoor, we get to experience how old traditional shamanic tales are told through drums, music and emotive imagery. And my writing's always been rather practical into what you can see, sense and feel. Whereas this was very much using words in a poetic way to kind of lyrically put you into the scene as if it were music, as if it was a spell, magic, you know, that's the magic of words. I found that very interesting. But at the same time, what can I take from that? Not much. It's literary fiction, and I suppose at the moment I'm into just standard normal fiction. But then I have been reading these other science fiction books, which have been very interesting because they've given me an insight in how people could use literary fiction in a way that is both scientific and also entertaining. I'm reading the Expanse novels, and at the moment they're really interesting how they can play on certain mythological archetypes and put them into a science fiction, psychological thriller. It's a lot of words today. I've really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that experience down in Dartmoor. But at the same time, the Open University is taking up a lot of my time because there's a lot of reading involved. As I mentioned before, I've had to study certain characters which of course I'm aware of, but now I'm just knowing more about them, how their reputations have affected literature or history or any other humanities, which is what I'm studying. Now with that in mind then, 2019 is the end of the decade. If I think about how things were at the beginning of 2010, things have changed. The places haven't, but me as a person, I've developed myself from being very much involved in other people to be more involved in myself, and learning that you can actually change people or change events. You can never really be active in a situation. Life is both active and passive. You both got to observe, listen, as well as interact. And I find that my persona has developed to become someone who is more passive in a way that he's active. Because no one can really get to know what I am or who I am. I feel like I really need to know people a bit more before I can start expressing myself in a way that is a bit more profound. So as a general kind of rule of thumb, one has to appear superficial just to appear normal nowadays, and that's kind of how I've had to develop this persona, which has not been too exciting. It's been rather dull, bland, but I feel that, you know, if you're always honest with people, then worthwhile being honest too, you're going to get yourself into trouble or unnecessary conflict, you know. I mean, there's no real need to kind of like go in front of people and be honest with them, and really they don't care about your opinion. All they care about is wanting to argue with you. And a lot of people just like to argue because it kind of reinforces their convictions, but at the same time they like to ridicule people. So there's no need to debate with people unnecessarily, and that's why it's easier to conform and just agree with what they have to say, unless it's something that really strikes a nerve with you, or unless that person's opinion is really worthwhile and valid to you. Then of course you gotta like express yourself, because then that is actually important. But in general, people's opinions nowadays are just weak. That's kind of what people tell them they say, and they say it. So I just kind of accept a lot of things as just trash, basically. I like to think that in my writing I find something more interesting for myself, because the more I write, the more I learn about myself, and that is actually a skill that developed pretty much around 2016 after I got separated. I mean, I did a lot of different art classes, you know, painting and drawing and theatre and dancing, and yeah, just like some of it was like 1 or 2 sessions, some of it was like a whole semester, but it was the writing that stuck with me with Alejandra Basualto. So she's a poet from Chile, and she really helped me come out my shell with regards to writing. And that was in Spanish, by the way, you know, so I had to read like Spanish stories, Spanish poems. And I wrote in English, but I had a friend called Macarena Pavon, and she translated the work for me. So that's kind of how I got into my writing dynamic, realizing that I wanted to be a writer because I enjoyed it. It helped me express myself in a way that I wasn't feeling I was being judged or criticized. In general, that writing is in essence going to be criticized and judged, which is fine, but the idea is that you gotta make it so damn good that whatever they say is their opinion and it cannot affect me. So that's why I haven't released any of my books or published them yet, because I've written 3 books, but they're not good enough for them to be released, because I feel whatever comes back is going to be like, if they criticize it, I'll understand that, but yeah, I understand where that comes from. Oh yeah, you got a point. Until that's been perfected, I'm always going to have these little problems. This decade has been a decade of learning, changing, developing. I lived in Chile, I come back from Chile. I mean, I got married, I got separated, I got divorced. I mean, it's all kind of part of the circle of life, as they were saying, The Lion King. But I think whatever is going to happen in the next 10 years is only just going to be the repeat of what's been happening the last 10 years, or something different, something new. I can't see it changing to the point that I'm going to be like radically a new man or something different. I mean, I just feel myself that I've reached a point in my existence that I'm content. So it's not necessarily an inner journey anymore, which is what I've considered the last 3 or 4 years. I like to think in the next 10 years, well, I'll be 43, you know, in 10 years time. I'd like to think by then I will have remarried, have children, have a house, and be a successful writer, or working towards my next degree. You can't think that far ahead. Someone would never have told me 10 years ago I'd be where I am today, because plans don't necessarily bring satisfaction. If anything, they just give you a guideline of what to follow to understand what you got to do next. So as long as you always have a sense of ambition and a sense of self-satisfaction, then you can never really feel like down in life, because you always know where you're going. Even though you're not going to get there, it's just at least you're going in the right direction. I've got nothing else planned to the extent that, oh, I'm going to be going and learning something new. I just know that I've got to finish the Open University, something I've started. I've got to finish it and work towards my goals, which will eventually lead to the rewards that I feel will make me happy. So here we are again, 2019, coming to an end. It's been a big year, it's been a good year, and to reflect on the decade, there's so much to talk about really, but I'm planning on, writing more about it than actually talking about it, because I don't know where to begin. Even talking about this year, I feel like I'm just jumping from the middle, beginning and end. It's just been a consistent series of serendipitous events that kind of are meant to happen, or they plan to happen, or they just happen, and I'm just really interested to see what will happen next. So this is me signing out for the year, wishing everyone a happy new year, and see you in 2020. Good night.